Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant, and we welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers, and certainly hope you're enjoying your weekend. It is a busy and perilous time around the world and here at home. The rapid events in Afghanistan grabbed attention this week as the Taliban quickly took over as America withdrew from the 20 years of military commitment that started after 9/11. Today's guest has called for the president's national security team to be dismissed. COVID numbers in Kentucky reached new highs, with hospitals scrambling again and having to delay regular care in some cases. There's also more economic uncertainty as businesses take new measures to protect workers and fears about inflation start to flare. Congressman Andy Barr, Republican of Lexington, is our guest this morning. We'll also discuss his role in trying to determine the origins of COVID-19, why he voted against the American Rescue Plan that sent money directly to Kentucky. Barr is expected to run for re-election next year, although he doesn't exactly know what his district will end up looking like. And there were some recent hints that he could be eyeing something else. So a lot to talk about with Congressman Andy Barr, and we welcome you and thank you for coming in. Appreciate it as always. So we've all seen the chaotic scenes this week. Afghanistan topping the world headlines at a time when U.S. troops are being withdrawn very rapidly. It quickly led to the Taliban taking over. As we approach 20 years of military involvement there, do you support the concept of pulling American troops out, just not in the way it has happened?
Well, of course, I support a orderly and conditional withdrawal of troops so long as we, number one, maintain the security situation and, most importantly, continue to protect the homeland. You know, I think President Biden thinks that he's finished with Afghanistan, but Afghanistan is not finished with him, and Afghanistan is not finished with the United States. And it's telling, and it is an indictment of the debacle and the incompetent and disorderly withdrawal and retreat from Afghanistan by this administration, that we now have more American boots on the ground as a result of this chaotic pullout than we did when President Biden took office. And what I would say as a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee is that because of this incompetent retreat from Afghanistan and the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, I believe that this will be seen in the history books as one of the most disheartening, embarrassing, disastrous, and predictable foreign policy catastrophes of our lifetime.
You have called for the president's national security team to be dismissed. Do you have any reason to believe that that could happen?
Well, look, I mean, I think the way this all was executed and mishandled is a total slap in the face to every men and woman who served under the flag of the United States, serving in uniform over these last 20 years, keeping America safe, keeping our homeland safe. And that's why I say this is so disheartening. I have received so many calls from Afghanistan, emails and text messages from members of my Veterans Coalition, men and women who served in Afghanistan, who are so upset about how this happened, and Gold Star families whose loved ones gave the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our freedom and to protect our homeland, who are so angry about how this happened, and they're questioning how this could how any administration could let this happen, to erase 20 years of progress in the fight against terrorism. And now we are more in peril and less safe than we were on September 10th, 2001. I just got off the phone on a conference call with former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. I learned something new this morning, and that is that as of this morning, the Taliban is in possession of more Black Hawk helicopters than our ally Australia. And these are our Black Hawk helicopters. So we have left behind 10 to 15,000 American citizens that are in harm's way, that are at risk of being dragged through the streets and hanged and burned alive by the Taliban. We have our artillery, our small arms weapons, our Black Hawk helicopters, other aircraft and tanks that are now in the hands of the Taliban. And what we saw over the weekend, what we witnessed in horror as the Taliban overran the Bagram Air Base and the associated prison, where there were thousands of terrorists, enemy combatants that had been apprehended over the years by U.S. forces and were detained there. The largest jailbreak of terrorists and suicidal jihadists since the beginning of the war on terror. The American people are much less safe today, not only because these terrorists are armed with our own weapons, because of this hasty retreat, an unplanned and disorganized retreat, but because this administration has no operational control over the southern border. Our border is wide open. And this is an extremely dangerous situation for the American people.
You have said that you do support the withdrawal. It has been 20 years. Was there a way to do this in an orderly way that would not have resulted in what happened, or was it inevitable that the Taliban would take over?
Not inevitable. And for the President of the United States to say that is absolutely absurd. It runs totally contrary to the history and to the intelligence. The fact of the matter is the previous administration had been drawing down. He inherited a force of about 10,000 U.S. troops. We were down to 2,500 and an orderly withdrawal process based on conditions. It was a condition-based withdrawal. This was an unconditional retreat. This president reversed the policy of the previous administration, and believe me, the Taliban was not deterred by this administration. And now other adversaries, like the Chinese Communist Party and Russia and Iran, they are looking at this retreat and they're seeing weakness and failure by this commander-in-chief and his national security team. And as a result, our allies are much less safe. And so, look, what the previous administration was doing was engaging with the Taliban on conditions. And whenever the Taliban violated those conditions, the United States brought strength and retaliation to the Taliban, and they knew that there would not be a withdrawal when they didn't meet the conditions.
Congressman, this is where we are now, though. In your view, how can the U.S. move forward? Is there any way to correct some of the things that have gone wrong?
Well, yes. I mean, I think there's a lot of things. Number one, when we get back to Washington, we have a call with the White House tomorrow, and then when we get back, we'll get a classified briefing. I have called on the entire national security team to resign because of the debacle that has ensued. But what we want from this administration is an accounting of the exact number of Americans that we have abandoned and left behind. And the fact that this president and this Secretary of Defense and National Security team will not guarantee that we will do everything we can to move heaven and earth to make sure every one of those Americans is evacuated is shameful. It is shameful that they have precipitously withdrawn and left our Afghan allies who fought and risked their lives beside American service personnel for the last 20 years and abandoned Bagram Air Base in a way to extract those people before they were able to get out, before the Taliban was overrun. Their lives are at risk right now. So what we want from the administration right now is a full accounting of the Americans who have been left behind. We want a full accounting of the equipment and weapons and aircraft that have fallen into enemy hands right now, so that we can take remedial action. And then I'm going to call on the administration as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee to immediately send a delegation to Taiwan to reassure our allies in Taiwan that we will counter Chinese aggression. The Chinese Communist Party is looking at what's happening. They notice that we've abandoned Bagram, we've abandoned our friends in Afghanistan. They're taking note. We need to send a delegation to Ukraine to send a message to Putin that we will not tolerate any adventurism on the part of Putin and Russia in Ukraine, and we need to immediately pull out of the Vienna talks to send a message to the mullahs in Tehran that we're not going to stand for re-entering a flawed Iran nuclear deal.
Do you expect your suggestions to be heard and maybe acted on?
Well, I mean, so far, obviously, this administration is completely incompetent and not deterring our enemies. This retreat, this surrender, is sending a terrible message. And Bill, here's the thing that I think the American people need to understand, that is why this national security team needs to be replaced immediately. As a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, we warned this administration not to abandon Bagram precipitously as part of their evacuation strategy, their retreat strategy. They ignored us. We warned them that the security situation on the ground was going to deteriorate if they abandoned the Afghan National Army and the security forces there. They ignored that. Then the intelligence community warned us as a bipartisan delegation in Congress, and we know they were warning the administration. They had the same access to the very same intelligence because, frankly, it was the administration itself that was briefing us that because of the disorganized retreat that was being executed by the Biden administration, the situation was deteriorating and the Taliban was taking over the provincial capitals.
Are you for keeping a long-term force in part of the country?
What I said multiple times over the last 5-6 months to this administration, both privately and in public hearings, was if you're going to withdraw from Afghanistan, why are you abandoning the Bagram Air Base? We had 2,500 residual troops. We had, in all intents and purposes, not only secured the victory, but we retained our counterterrorism mission, and we had an air base on the back door of the People's Republic of China. If the plan is to pivot to deter China, why are we giving up an air base in a country with the only border to China? And so, look, no one wants endless wars, but we've had a presence in Japan and Germany and South Korea for 75 years. This presence that we had remaining at Bagram Air Base was smaller than the number of troops that we have in Spain. So for a very limited cost, and not to nation build or to promote an endless war, but simply to deter and to prevent the Taliban from taking over, and also to deter the Chinese Communist Party, Bagram was a strategic asset that was needlessly given away.
All right, that has been the major international and domestic story of the week. We will see what next week brings when those questions come up in Washington. The COVID-19 issue is, of course, of a major concern here in the U.S. Let's take a break.